Thank you, and good morning to all of you. As a colored South African growing up in apartheid South Africa, I object to the term non-white in the way that they refer to what I was not, rather than what I was. And if you think about the exclusivity policy of the apartheid system, it was to marginalize, it was to reduce. And when you think about the non-profit sector, we refer to organizations for what they're not rather than what they are. And you kind of stop and you think non-profit. Non, a mere negation or absence of something. Profit, we talk about gain, abundance, value, non-profit. It's a contradiction in terms, as a matter of fact. It's a negation rather than an affirmation of the social value created by the non-profit sector. Why is that? I mean, we've come to accept that that is the paradigm within which we work. I left corporate. I was in corporate for many years, and when I left, I was fortunate to take over a non-profit organization called the South African Growth Institute. And one of the first things that I came across and that I discovered in my experience was that the model for non-profits was essentially very different to the business models for corporate South Africa. So when you think about the business model, and you think about a consumer, a customer, as we know them, that buys an economic output, a service or product, he pays for it, and we generate revenues and profit. Essentially, that's the way we've described our business models. In the world of the non-profit sector, very similar. We have products and services. We have customers, but these customers typically can't afford to pay for the kind of services that we offer them. So we look to donors and we look to donor organizations to support us to provide those services to those customers, to those beneficiaries. The problem, the fundamental problem with the model is that when the donor, or when that funding pipeline is closed, the entire business model collapses because there is no alternate revenue stream for the non-profit to sustain itself. Ethical? Is that the right thing? And it's almost as if we've designed the system to perform the way it does. So what underpins this? What are the underlying kind of issues that we need to think about? Revenue generation, profitability, allows us to invest and scale in our overhead. So things like advertising and marketing. In the world that I came from, we had substantial budgets to invest in our marketing and advertising revenue. We think about our compensation models. We attract the best skills out there because we have the right compensation models. We have time on our hands. We have time that allows us to scale our business, our markets, grow our customer base. We have a stock exchange. We can raise investment to scale and grow our business. When you look at all of these things and you think about the non-sector, the non-profit sector, and you think about the kind of challenges they've got because they don't have the luxury of overhead. As a matter of fact, our mantra is keep your overhead low. Essentially, we don't have the compensation models to attract the right kind of skills. So we're always looking and searching for the best talent to attract to that sector. And it's very difficult because we can't pay them market-related salaries. We don't have the kind of revenue streams to invest in our marketing and advertising. Taking risks on new revenue ideas. Because we don't have these alternate revenue streams, we lack the ability to innovate and be creative. We don't have the luxury of time because we are contracted into the financial cycle of the donor organization. So we don't have the luxury of time to scale our business and our dreams. We don't have a stock market for NGOs. So when that funding pipeline closes, it's very difficult for us to reignite our organizations, our businesses. And I work with many businesses, and I work with many organizations daily facing the same kind of struggle. The lack of funding, the lack of resources, the lack of expertise at board level, at management level, and they're doing good work. Why is that? Why have we allowed it to happen? Oh yes, and the big one. The big one, which is overhead. You know, I did a project, and when we did the contract with our benefactor organization, they said to me, well, you do know the one thing you've got to do is you've got to keep the overhead as low as possible, because we want the bulk of the investment to go to the beneficiary. And what they didn't understand is for us to deliver at the scale that they wanted us to deliver, we needed that overhead component. We needed to invest into the project. We needed to bring on board the right kind of skills. We needed the right systems, technology systems, financial systems, to enable us to deliver on that mandate. So it was, you know, I said to them, it's almost as if you're sabotaging me before I've even started the work. And their logic was, but we want the money flow to go to our beneficiary. And I call this the starvation cycle. I mean, Dan Pilato, I'm not sure if you've watched his TED talk, and he talks about how we've engineered and how we talk about and how we ask NGOs, keep your overhead low. And nonprofits are no exception to the rule. We have, like most organizations and businesses, we have infrastructure, we have requirements, we have resources that we need to ensure the sustainability and the ongoing of our success of our business and our mandate and our projects. So we need the sturdy technology systems. We need the financial systems. We need to develop and skill and develop our staff. We need the right kind of fundraising mechanisms to ensure that we create the right revenue streams to ensure our longevity and our sustainability in the long term. The problem is that we don't have that essential overhead. We have over 1,000 NGOs registering every month in this country. Now, there's another phenomenon that's playing out, and that is that the NGO has become a very simple entry into the world of business. If you think about it, it's not as restrictive as starting your own company. So a lot of people in communities are starting these NGOs because they find it's a very quick way of earning and making a living. The problem is that we've imposed, and I think, you know, I work with a lot of corporates. I work with their strategic philanthropy functions and corporate social responsibility functions, and we impose on these organizations a lot of red tape and a lot of bureaucracy. We talk about impact. We start to talk about social return on investment, things that these people don't understand because they don't have access to the expertise and knowledge. Okay. They're about the heart. They're about going out there and doing a good thing. Okay. And what we do is we impose all of these mechanisms on them that really detracts them from their core mission because they're struggling just to meet the administrative requirement of what the donor wants. There's something fundamentally wrong here. And I think we need to stop and we need to pause. And too often, the marketing manager, the marketing executive who manages the CSI portfolio is about the checklist. He's about the tick box. He's about saying within a financial year, we have funded and donated a few projects and we've put our brand out there, and that's all he's interested in. And I've had these conversations, and it's disturbing. They don't really care about the impact. Now, I'm generalizing, and I'm not saying that it happens in most organizations. But I must say that I've come across a lot of organizations that think about strategic corporate social responsibility as a function of the marketing department and not as a core part of their business strategy. So how do we fix this? How do we get past this? Does big business have a role in reversing the demise of the nonprofit sector? Absolutely yes, they do. We can't sit on the sideline and just ignore this. And what we're talking about, and there was a Harvard review, and there's an organization called Conscious Capital. They talk about conscious business. And it's really bringing these two very disparate thoughts together. Conscious capital. Capital often When we think of capital, we think of profits, we think of revenue, we think of growth, we think of all those good things. Consciousness, or conscious, is about awareness. It's about being more than just profits. And I think Andrew alluded to this earlier on as well. It's about understanding that conscious capital, conscious business, is purposed beyond the mechanism of profit. It is about making a fundamental difference. It's about being more, fundamentally more. And there's a few things that we can do very quickly that can shift, that can move us into this new paradigm. And there are essentially 4 things that I want to focus on. And the one is the notion of purpose, why we exist, what are we all about, principles, ethics, values, stakeholders, leadership, and culture. And these are the 4 key ingredients that we have in our business. So we think about purpose. We think about a higher purpose. In the corporate world that I came from, it was about shareholder value. It was about the wallet, the customer's wallet. That's the language we spoke. That's the language that we were taught to engage in. But essentially, sustainable business is more than just the profits. It's about understanding that we are part of a system, we're part of a community, and we have a role to play. Our purpose must be more than just profits. It has to be, to ensure ongoing sustainability into the future. Stakeholders. Value creation for all. Who are our stakeholders? And often we talk about the shareholder, we talk about the customer, but we do realize that the corporate, the organization, the business exists within a community, it exists within a context, and it has a much bigger role to play than purely selling products and services to customers. It's about making and becoming something different. I think the key thing is, we know that for businesses to be sustainable, we need to think beyond the profits. We need to think about the non-profit sector as the catalyst for profit. Without the non-profit, you can't be profitable. The non-profit is the missionaries for the corporate sector. And that's the way we should be seeing them. We should be thinking differently about that world. Leadership. Cultivate conscious culture, understanding the higher purpose. The job of leaders is to essentially live through authentic leadership, live this new culture of consciousness, of becoming more, of being more. It starts at the top. It starts with our leaders. And the leader's job is to engage the stakeholders, all the different stakeholders, employees, customers, shareholders, around this new purpose, and galvanize them into seeing something far bigger than what they typically see. And then, of course, the culture, the glue, the piece that brings it all together, the piece that connects everything. The ethos, the values and principles and behaviors that underpins the social fabric of the business. So what kind of cultures do we espouse to have in our organizations? What are the kind of messages that we're putting out there to staff? When I was in corporate, we'd do the annual go and paint the house in a township somewhere. And it was short-lived, and it was a day out, and we all felt good about each other. And the next day we'd go back, step into our offices, and we'd get on with business. And we'd forget about it. We need to think differently about this. And I do think that the kind of culture that we want in this kind of organization, in this conscious business, is a culture of wanting more, of understanding that we exist for a purpose, that we exist for more than just making a profit. A different paradigm. I never describe myself as a non-profit organization. We are a for-purpose, for-profit organization. We have revenue streams. Our donor base is diminishing because we've understood that it's a model that's not going to work for us. So we have a purpose, and we are profitable. Okay? And when we talk about profitable, in this context, we're not talking about money, revenues. We're talking about profitable as in the impact that we make. The fact that we can invest back into the kind of programs that we want. The fact that we can scale our dreams and really make a difference in the communities that we work in. Essentially, it's about purpose and profit. And it's this notion of, and it really comes down to two choices. Your business, you can stay as you are, or your business and social good.